Welcome to 3DLANES number 76. We are recording this on Monday, May 25th. And today we'll be talking about the globalization of photography. And, well, as you can imagine, the class that I'm taking now, it's global learning and also global business. So globalization is obviously part of it. Takes a big part of or covers a lot of what entails to do business around the world now in a globalized economy. And I wanted to correlate the subjects, or at least initial subjects of the course, into this episode. But the initial part of the globalization of photography, I mean, it starts in Europe, right? Because photography leadership, early photography leadership was European, and specifically German, with Leica, Zeiss, and Rollei. And what the camera once was, which was a precision engineering artifact or machine that also had luxury manufacturing, optical craftsmanship, somehow very similar to Swiss watches, right? Because it is it was a very exclusive and luxury type of instrument. And back then, they both were a need, not so much of a want, right? So Germany represented, and they still do. I think that Germany still represents prestige, optics, and engineering quality, right? So also when it comes to cars, Germany is also engineering quality. Optics is still with Leica, right? They represent that. And prestige, still, these brands represent all that. And we have parallels such as Porsche. From Swiss brands, we have Rolex. The Bauhaus industrial design is also another parallel. But the the second step of the globalization, right, is the adoption of photography in Japan. So Japan became the trigger to industrialize this whole photography industry. And post World War II Japan transformed the industry completely, because we have the emergence of brands like Canon, Nikon, Minolta, Pentax, Olympus, Fuji, and they were able to turn the camera, the photographic camera, from an elite instrument into something scalable and something that the mass market could have. Um, so what exactly what happened, right? Like they were able to manufacture everything at scale. They were able to export everything that they made. They improved quality. They had low production costs, and they made it accessible for the mass market, right? That's the story that we see in products like this. And if you want to see something like that, just go to the episode of the Canon AE1 program, which is, let's see, episode number 4. So if you want to learn more about the AE1 program and how, maybe Japan were able to scale everything and how that camera became a success, go to episode number 4. But at the beginning, just like how we see some countries now, the made in Japan uh, statement was viewed as something cheap, not something from quality. And then this made in Japan became a sign of reliability and precision, similar to cars, just like Toyota, Lexus, Honda, you name it. But the next step, right? Step number 3, we can consider how the camera becomes global. And this this where the story changes, because this is where globalization begins to uh begins to become something more heavy in the manufacturing process of cameras. So sensors nowadays mostly come from Japan, right? It could be from Sony, or, well, mostly Sony, I think. Most of the brands use Sony, maybe. I would have to do more research on that. Let's put a let's put a pin on that. But assembly could happen in countries like Thailand, right? Components may come from China. Design can happen somewhere else. Sometimes, I don't know, let's call it US or any other country. Software development is globalized. You can have software engineers anywhere you want. So what becomes a quote unquote Japanese camera is actually something that is from everywhere. So this is the same with smartphones, with cars, and with watches, right? So again, collective horology has a big episode about what entails to be Swiss made when it comes to watches. So you listen to that. Not everything has to be made in Switzerland for that to apply. So now we can transition to some parallels that I see, that I recognize. The biggest and heaviest one that everybody probably has in mind is China, right? China might be, to my eyes, on the verge of doing something very similar to what Japan did, to what Korea did. And we see, for example, EVs, BYD cars. BYD is the brand, if you don't know. It's a Chinese manufacturer of EVs, electric vehicles. And another example, we have Atelier Wen, which is a watch brand that the founders are French, but the manufacturing and everything, the heritage that they want to promote is Chinese. So they're trying to create a luxury product that comes from China, something that I don't think we have seen yet. Because I was speaking about this subject with my wife, and the correlation that people make is knockoffs of luxury items come from China, right? Not the luxury item per se. So that's a change that they're trying to achieve or to trigger. South Korea is another example, right? South Korea has already made the switch, which is very, very interesting. Vietnam, I think it's on the verge of doing something, or to start the path to become the next China, South Korea, or Japan. There's a lot of manufacturing happening in Japan, I mean, in Vietnam, sorry. And a lot of companies have moved to Vietnam to manufacture their products. Let's leave it at products, right? Because I don't want to give any specifics. But they also have, at least in the watch industry, you can find a lot of leather goods being made in Vietnam, like watch straps and all that stuff, belts, wallets. But if it's pertinent to the watch industry, it will be watch straps. You find similar quality from something from other Asian countries, but a minimal fraction of the price, which is crazy. So it's craftsmanship products are coming from Vietnam also. China has also made connections or established themselves with other quality German, or actually Hasselblad is not German. Is it from Sweden? Yes, so it's Swedish. Well, it was Swedish. It's almost similar to Volvo, and I think that has to do something with the approach that China is taking. As of today, May 25th, 2026, Hasselblad has majority ownership. Uh, uh, they don't have a majority ownership. Sorry, it's majority owned by a Chinese company, just like Volvo. So these Swedish products, which are, people think of them as quality and heritage, now they've been purchased by China. So that switch is on the verge of making, which is understandable, right? They want to create something that is luxury, and it comes straight from China. One of the issues that we might have here in the US is because of the political environment that we have now. We might not see the products that are manufactured in China, like BYD, and be able to enjoy them here. Volvo and Hasselblad are a different story, so that's why we're able to purchase them here in the US. But let's see the historical pattern. So we start with cheap manufacturing, right? The country perception is low cost, imitation, like we said, imitation of luxury goods, poor quality, and mass production. Historically, Japan in the 1950s was there. South Korea in the 80s and 90s was there. China in the 2000s was there. But neither of these countries are there anymore. And one example of cheap Korean manufacturing back in the 80s is the episode of the Hyundai Excel that I made, number 47. So if you want to know more about the story of that car and how Korean manufacturing was perceived back then, you should go listen to that. But the consumer initially they resist the prestige from those countries, right? So made in Japan at the beginning, it was not seen as good, but now it's absolutely the opposite. And you can have another example, right? Like the Japanese denim, something that the US used to make before. Now the Japanese made it because they copied what the US was making, and now they own basically that industry. We're trying to get something back here in the US, but it's not the same. It might be tough, but it's something that you can also see that now Japanese manufacturing is considered as something of quality, right? It took time, 1950s to today. It's quite some time, but they did it. The phase two, manufacturing competence. This one, the companies would improve consistency, engineering, process control, supply chains, industrial capability. The products are more reliable, they're competitive, and they're technically impressive. We have Hyundai and Kia as this example, right? So the Ioniq 5, perfect example. Uh, Cars are consistent, engineering is good, process control, supply chains, blah, 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 all that stuff is good behind the scenes. Product become reliable, right? Any car has recalls, so if you tell me, oh, there's two or three recalls on Hyundai or Kia, better than uh, marking the product as a fail, like the early Hyundai cars or anything else that was not really reliable. They're technically impressive. The design of those cars is really, really impressive. And we have the example also of Japan, which reached Toyota, Sony, and Canon. Those three brands are perfect example of manufacturing competence from Japan. South Korea, as we said, Hyundai, they have it. Kia has it. Samsung has it, right? You don't see a Samsung phone and think, oh, that's just garbage. Because no, it's up to par with the Apple stuff. I mean, I know Apple fanboys are gonna say it's not, but whatever. That's another story. Then the phase three, the prestige and identity, right? So this is the hardest step, and I feel like China is here. They're trying to break through this one. So it's not just we can manufacture anymore because we know they can manufacture. Now it's more like they can make products that people connect with emotionally, like watches. Watches are not a need; they're emotional purchases. And I think China is here, but for example, if we have BYD right as a company, it's not a car that I have seen or that I have driven. Any BYD car because I live in the US. I never been to China, so I won't be able to tell you. I haven't been to a country where they have BYDs, so again, I won't be able to tell you. BYD represents vertical integration, battery leadership, EV scale, and industrial confidence. So they're beginning to export good stuff, right? So the made in China label is gonna change. It's not just cheap manufacturing, low cost anymore, or stuff that breaks easy and you can buy it cheap again. Nope. It's a change. Again, Atelier Wen, like we spoke, is even more significant because he's trying to do something that's, like we said, psychologically difficult, and it's create something that it's luxury, but that comes from China, something that I don't think has been made yet globally, and I think they're succeeding. I do believe it, but it's not just representing Chinese manufacturing, but the prestige of Chinese products, and we have similarities of how Lexus have to split from Toyota, or Grand Seiko had to split from Seiko, or Genesis had to separate from Hyundai to be a little differentiated, right? So this prestige requires uh, trust from from the consumer and the narrative to change. So it's not just that you're capable; you have to change how you tell your story. Uh, we also have smartphones, right? Those are breakthrough items in different countries. Nothing that we see here, like Huawei or Xiaomi or Vivo. These guys are partnering with Hasselblad, Leica, or Zeiss. And again, the glass quality of those phones when it comes to taking photos might be great, but we don't see them here, so it's hard to tell. And South Korea, I think it's a living proof of how this can work. And it's for example, they went from cheap cars, economy cars, and budget electronics to luxury vehicles, premium displays, and global design leadership. Again, the Ionic 5 and whatever Kia is doing with the car industry is design wise great, luxury wise great. Now they have a huge export power. It's really really interesting. And now if we move to Vietnam, I think it is interesting. I don't think you should bash anything camera related just because comes from Vietnam, right? They might have a learning curve now, but I think Vietnam is an up and coming force, and it might compete with these three countries soon, very very soon. And again, talking about leather goods, textiles, furniture, small batch manufacturing, they can do it. But now the question would be, can they move from manufacturing products to creating global desire brands? That's something else. And I think at this point we still see German optics, German cameras being the top of the line. Japan used to be considered cheap. It might still be cheap. It might be like mid tier, mid pricing bracket products, but they're still good. Every professional might be mostly using Japanese stuff. So Japanese is not cheap anymore, right? It's cheap, or when I say cheap, I don't say price cheap, but more manufacturing cheap. And if you check your Fuji camera, more than likely it will say made in China, right? It's a Japanese camera, but it's made in China, guaranteed. Um, and that doesn't mean that made in China is bad anymore. Don't believe your grandpa or your parents just because that's the stigma that they had. I think we are in a in a change of or turning of events when it comes to manufacturing. I know I made this more about global manufacturing than camera manufacturing, but I think it's a signal, and as we know, there's a lot of films, photo films coming from China also, so don't sleep on those. I think we cannot sleep on products just because of the product of origin anymore. And that is a reflection in cameras, it's a reflection on cars, and it's a reflection on watches. Hate it or love it, right? Because a lot of those Swiss watches that you wear, a lot of those components come from China. Um, and I'm not emphasizing on China just to defend China, because I'm not defending anybody here. I'm just stating facts, and I don't think, again, we can judge a product just by where is manufactured anymore. Not anymore. I don't think so. I will leave it here. Thank you for your time. I will see you next time.